Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Richardson. Happy to be here on behalf of Early Music Vancouver with another in the series called Intimate Conversations. These are, well, just that, conversations about upcoming Early Music Vancouver concerts. This one called Festive Cantatas. It has two airings, one at the K Meek Center on Friday, December the 17th, that's at 7:30, and then the following day at the Chan Center at UBC, so on the 17th and the 18th. And is that a Friday and a Saturday and Sunday? You all can look it up.
I think it's Saturday, Sunday, but yeah,
Saturday,
look for
Sunday. Saturday, Sunday. Okay, I sit corrected. So thanks, Alex Weimann, who was speaking just then. Bless his heart, who's the artistic director of Pacific Baroque Orchestra, as I'm sure you all know. And joining us from Montreal, he will be coming to Vancouver for the shows, is Matthew Jennejohn, who is going to be performing oboe and oboe d'amore with these two cantatas, about which we're going to be speaking. And he's also very well known as a cornet player and a cornetto, I should properly say, I guess, and also as a maker. And if you take a look at Matthew on the screen and you think, looks like he's in his man cave. In fact, he is. He's in the workshop there where he does an instrument making, and I hope we'll be able to hear a little bit about that. But first of all, let's talk about the program. And before we talk specifically about these two pieces, the Magnificat and the Bach cantata, Let Our Mouths Be Full of Laughter. I'm just kind of curious about Christmas itself and about what it would have been for Bach. Because for us, we think about Christmas, and maybe I'm alone in this, but it's a season that's full of complications. It's fraught with events, it's fraught with emotions, it's rife with nostalgia. It's not straightforward, and for a lot of us, it has less and less to do with the story that actually made it possible. So, Alex, maybe I'll ask you this first of all. What would Christmas have been for Bach? What would his Christmas have been? Not what we do, obviously.
Well, probably since he was a professional musician and very busy, he probably also had a very troubled and more complex and certainly not just simply sentimental view. For once, he had to come up with pieces on a timeline. Ask composers, talk to composers who live. That's a nightmare. It's probably the worst in their lives, and I don't think we have reason to assume it would have been different for Bach. So I think it was just a very busy time, and between his family and his obligations. I'm not sure how much time he really had to indulge in sentiments. On an artistic side of things, I believe it was really meaningful to him in a way that we probably have a hard time imagining, because we are so inundated in I don't know, business, commerce, whatnot. So there is very little space for, Bill, as you said, the core message, which is the message of new life and joy and all of that. But when it comes to him wrapping that message in music, I think because those pieces are so irresistible after centuries now, that it must have meant a lot to him to be able to bring it to that point that we still understand, that still overwhelms us. At least when I hear the three trumpets and the three oboes and the flutes and strings in the beginning of the Unser Mund sei voll Lachens, and that goes into the fast part, which is used for those words, our mouth be full of laughter. I find it hard to imagine how anybody's mouth can't be full of laughter listening to that music. You know, it's very powerful.
It's so this is the Cantata BWV 110, and the English title is "Let Our Mouths Be Full of Laughter." And in the first movement of it, there is this. I mean, it's one of those things that probably composers deal with more than once over the course of a long career, which is making music that sounds like laughing. And this is absolutely spectacular. It's like it's laughter and it's babbling brook at the same time. It's really an amazing feat of writing.
The joy is contagious, isn't it? When you listen to that first movement, it's just wonderful.
Yeah. Matthew, for you, Matthew, I mean, for singers, I know Christmas is inevitably going to be a kind of what fresh hell is this situation, because there's going to be one Messiah after the other, or Christmas oratorio after the other, and no doubt there's great joy in that, and no doubt it's good to have the work come along. I don't doubt that for 1 second. But for you as an instrumentalist, is it also a particularly busy time?
It is a busy time. And as you mentioned, Messiah, just about every Christmas now, I have a little Messiah tour for maybe a week or so. So I'll have about 5 or 6 of those to do in the Montreal area in the beginning of December, just before I come to Vancouver. So when I arrive in Vancouver, I will just have Messiah tunes going through my head. Thank God Bach will help me get those earworms out.
Yeah, although it must be said that with Messiah or with the Magnificat, which I think is probably the best known of the 2 pieces that are being performed on the 17th and 18th by Pacific Baroque Orchestra. So the cantata of which we've been speaking and the Magnificat. The Magnificat's best known, but there's a reason why people go to these pieces every year, and it just has to do with the essential quality of them, right? I mean, we wouldn't be returning to them year after year after year were it not for that. So,
well, yeah, and the Magnificat is just such a wonderful masterwork because it's packed with greatest hits. Like almost every aria is a greatest hit, the famous ones, like ones you hear on sort of Bach's top 20. You hear a bunch of tunes from the Magnificat. It's really a wonderful piece.
Absolutely. And in a way, I always found it quite un-Bach. In that it gives you the pleasure that he gives you in every piece, obviously. But in most pieces, he requires a long stretch of torture. So sometimes just by the sheer length of arias, right? And sometimes they are also packed with some sort of subliminal, messages. But in the Magnificat, all the arias are very short, and they are really tuneful, and they don't seem to have that hidden agenda of that we have to go through some sort of pain to get pleasure. They just seem to give pleasure for free.
That's great. I mean, both texts are based in biblical text. The Cantata 110, the BWV 110, is a text by Lems, which is based on biblical quotations, and the Magnificat is the Canticle of Mary from the Gospel of Luke. So plainly, there's a religious thing, but there is also in both those pieces, and maybe most conspicuously in "Let Our Mouths Be Full of Laughter," an element of something that I don't want to say it's comic exactly, but they're warm with the kind of good humor. For me as a lay listener, that's how I find them.
Absolutely, and the Cantata 110 may be relatively unknown, but the first movement, which the fast part is that "Our Mouth Full of Laughter," may be known as the beginning of the fourth orchestral suite. So it's I find it also interesting that there is a connection between what we would not put under sacred pieces by Bach and a cantata, a religious cantata. So I think that idea that everything, the everyday life, as much as sacred things, is one actually, um, and full of joy. I think that's really in Bach, very deeply in Bach, even in his saddest pieces.
Is there a way of reading these almost as theater pieces? Again, there is something about them that is essentially theatrical, I think.
I think it's Bach's way of writing an opera. He never wrote an opera, and he probably is, at least my suspicion, wouldn't have been very good at it. But it is theatrical and dramatic in its own way, and in that, perfect. I think, Matt, you said it earlier. It's difficult to not respond to that joy when you hear it, right? It's contagious. That was your word, exactly. And I totally agree. It's there is a very strong energy in that, which must come from some sort of being grounded, a foundation in some sort of belief or philosophy or whatever it is, and you feel that in the music, and it's very authentic. I find it's difficult to not believe it somehow.
I was washing the dishes a little earlier, and I put that Bach cantata on, and the second I heard the beginning of that first movement, I was like, "Wow, okay,
Yeah.
that feel great." It was inspiring. It gets me excited.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about how Bach uses the oboes and wind instruments generally? I mean, woodwind instruments, because the brass is his own thing, but when you listen to the cantatas, these or others, and can we properly call the Magnificat a cantata? Does that qualify as a cantata? I mean,
I don't think so.
no, it's just something.
That's a good question. No, I think it would probably be called a motet, technically correct, but of course it comes as a cantata. It's totally a cantata with more choral parts and more solos in between. So and the cantata, of course, could also come as a serenata, or you could also think of it as one act, I guess, of an opera or a mini opera, or also it's really all one. I think we try to find the right terms more than they would have been concerned about that.
Well, Matthew, talk to me a little bit about how Bach writes for the oboe and how he uses the oboe in these cantatas.
Well, in the it's going to be fun because in the cantata 110 we have 3 oboes, so there will be and Bach writes for the regular oboe, which is this one, and then he writes for the oboe d'amore, which is a little bit longer, and the sort of bulb-shaped bell, and then you're also going to hear the oboe da caccia.
Whoa!
Which has a big brass bell on it, it's like a da caccia, so the hunting oboe, like it with a horn shape.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to hear all 3 of those in the cantata 110. This is a big joy. So we have trumpets and we have 3 oboes, and there's going to be a lot of noise. And then in the Magnificat there are just 2 oboes, but we also play oboe d'amore, and in both of those pieces there is an aria with a solo oboe d'amore part. So that's one of the the special things that Bach I mean, he writes a lot of, solo obligato parts for instruments, and especially for oboe. I think the oboe I'm an oboe player talking, but, maybe Bach had a sort of special place in his heart for the oboe because he sure wrote a lot of solos for it. And if you go through all his cantatas, 200 and a little bit of them, there are more solos for oboe than any other instrument by a long shot. And here in Montreal, we've had at the Musée des Beaux-Arts, Isolde Lagacé started a full cycle of Bach cantatas to play them all, and it took about 8 years, I think. And it's the way it works is they have different groups come and play Bach cantatas and get through all 200 and I don't know 10 or 220, I'm not exactly sure, over 7 or 8 years. And so it's just finishing. And Isolde said to me, I'm counting how many performances different people had in all these 7-8 years of Bach cantatas. And she said, well, guess what? Guess who has the most? She said, you. She said, you, by far, were in more concerts than anybody else. And it's because of the Bach's writing for the oboe. So there's so much oboe. And well, I guess, I mean, I'm fortunate that I play with several, Baroque orchestras around here, so I got to be involved. So yeah, we're going to hear some very special writing for the oboes. And yeah, as I mentioned, the oboe d'amore, this is the kind of slightly lower one, will be used for a couple solos in this concert. Yeah, I mean, why does he use it? Well, I mean, I guess the oboe is, it's good at being an expressive instrument. And I mean, of course, as is the violin and the flute and everything, but I don't know, it has its own, its special qualities. That reed makes a sound that can project and that can cut, and it can be touching. And if you have a bad reed, it sounds horrible and you really don't want to hear it, but those get thrown out. Anyway.
I did a very brief stint as an oboe player when I was a student, and I was so bad at making the reeds that I understood there was no future in it for me. But we should. I want to ask Alex some about some of the vocal aspects. But Matthew, as long as we're talking about making things, and since you are in your workshop, I look over your right shoulder there, or just to the right of you. There's a whole bunch of wood, and this one is plainly marked out. Is that marked out for the cutting of cornettos? Is that what that's about?
It's very strategically placed for this video.
Thoughtful of you.
It's two things. It shows the wood and it also hides the mess on my work desk.
What kind of wood is that?
Okay, well, I have a couple things here. This is a piece of satin wood that I use for making cornettos. And I was just in Vancouver, gosh, a week or two ago for the Schutz concert, and I played cornetto in that. So here is a cornetto, which is made from wood. It's kind of hard to see, and covered in black leather.
Did you make that one?
Yes, I did. And there is a little mouthpiece. It's like a miniature trumpet mouthpiece that goes in here. And the mouthpiece is made from horn. So anyway, to make the cornetto, because it has a curved shape, you have to cut curved pieces of wood. So I have templates that I use to sketch out my curves on this kind of on wood, and I will cut it out in a bandsaw. And I have a couple pieces right here that I've cut out. What I also have, yeah, okay, so here's a cutout one.
Oh, wow.
And
how do you bend it?
I just cut the curve. It's not actually bent. I cut it curved. And this one here is made from European boxwood, which is this other prop I have behind me. big log of European boxwood. It's, as far as I know, probably the hardest wood you can get in Europe. Very, very fine grained, very dense. And that, I mean, you wonder how can you get a cornetto out of this one? Well, I can't. That's too small. This I can use for oboe making, which I'm just starting to do. My other prop, the most impressive one, is a log that you can get a cornetto out of. And that's this.
Whoa.
Huge thing. So that's a big trunk of a boxwood tree. That it's really heavy. Like this thing weighs a ton.
That's amazing. So would boxwood have been the wood of choice for instrument makers in the early days of the cornetto? And
Well, for woodwind makers, it was definitely one of the best. Cornettos were often made in boxwood. Not always. They used other woods, like fruit woods, like plumwood.
Mm-hmm.
Different color, a bit softer, but still a very hard wood. Maple, other fruit woods, maybe like pear, things like that. Hard woods. Oboes, Baroque oboes, are most of the time made in boxwood. Probably, 90% of them are boxwood, and this has been stained with nitric acid stain to make it look darker. And because it's very dense and very hard, it has a great clear ringing sound for these wind instruments. It's not as hard as later on the oboe was made out of even harder woods like granadilla, wood, ebony type woods, and those are another step harder, the tropical woods.
Right. So is it are you quite unique in having your expertise on these two instruments, or is it quite usual for Baroque oboists also to play cornetto?
It's very unusual, actually.
What would have thought?
Yeah, very unusual because the playing technique is quite different. Well, in that, the cornetto mouthpiece, it buzzes like a little trumpet mouthpiece, so it's like a brass technique with woodwind fingerings. Yeah. Whereas the oboe is the reed. So in fact, there are quite few people who play the two instruments together. Yeah.
And I guess, well, plainly you worked out a way so that whatever it is that you have to do embouchure wise with the cornetto, it doesn't get in the way of your oboe playing. I would have thought that would have been the liability.
Well, that's a good question because, those who were at the Schutz concert would have noticed that I play the cornetto from the side of the mouth over here. Oh. And oboe is, I would have a reed in it, but I hold it in the center. It's played in the center of the mouth always. But if you look at historical sources for the cornetto, they show in paintings that very often the cornetto players are playing like this or from the other side and with their hands in any which way. Sometimes in the middle, but there are actual treatises, sources that say the cornetto is played from the corner of the mouth. Huh. So we know that it was a very common technique. And in my case, that works out well because then I play the oboe here and the cornetto there. It separates things a bit. I used to, when I was a student, played them both in the middle, and I ended up having some troubles on the cornetto at a certain point. It's like my technique hit a sort of plateau and I had a few troubles. I couldn't fix them, and I thought I need to make a change. And so I tried switching over to the side, and at first I could barely play even one note, but I just sort of stuck with it. And after a couple of days, I was getting several notes. And then after a week or two, I started getting most of the range of the instrument. And then after 2 or 3 months, I had surpassed the level that I had been before and sort of got off that plateau and was able to fix these problems that I'd been having. And so for me, it worked really well to separate the two. But yeah, cornetto can also be played in the middle. It is by many players, because a lot of modern cornetto players have a trumpet background, so they're used to.
Yeah, this is what I would have imagined. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that we shouldn't I don't want to keep you guys too much longer because you've been really generous with your time, but just to say that I hope I'm not misspeaking. I don't think I am. That if people want to see that Schutz concert that was done at St. Andrews Wesley, I believe it's part of the digital concert hall on Early Music Vancouver, so they can watch you play the cornetto there, and then see you play the oboe and oboe d'amore at the Kamiq Center or the Chan Center, and then I think also that'll be part of the digital concert hall. We haven't mentioned this is a bit of an oversight. The fine singers who are coming, and one the soloists in this case are also going to be the choir. So, Alex, maybe I'll ask you to speak to that a little bit, and which I bet for them that's going to be kind of a fun situation because they've all got backgrounds as choir singers as well as soloists. So, to be both soloist and choir is going to be a bit of a kick, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, it's a thing, right? It's a lot for them, so they need to get prepared for that. But I actually have never met any singer who complained about having to sing the choruses. And I mean, in the case of both the cantata with the beginning chorus and the chorale and all of the Magnificat choruses, of course, that's the most beautiful to sing. Yeah, it's a concept that we don't hear so often, but Bach had not huge groups at hand for his performances. So the situation where he had only one singer for a part would have been probably much more frequent than we imagine. I'm not saying it was all the time the case, and there's also pieces that work quite well with a choir. But some of the big pieces, like the B minor Mass or the Magnificat, so a lot of pieces in 5 parts, I think are indicators for one on a part. So one singer only, and it's a little bit of a challenge for the singers. It's also a little bit of a challenge for placement on stage because we want a balanced sound, but it kind of gives you a very high transparency to the sound picture, and in a way you can hear the polyphony even better, and in a way, though there may be less air pressure or less volume in decibel, I think often of it as more magnificent, if that makes sense, than bigger textures. So I'm really looking forward to that part, and the singers are, of course, picked for that matter. That, as you just said, that they have experience and joy in just singing together as well.
Yeah, so it's going to be a kind of stripped down chamber music experience almost. It'll be fantastic to hear it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, the big aha moment was really doing the B minor Mass this way, because that's one of the pieces that we think of masses, right? Big orchestras, big choirs, and I was sort of perplexed myself that it had the same kind of power, you know. It seemed to have the same voltage with smaller means, and yeah, it's a little bit of a chamber version, but it really opens the door to a different experiencing of the texture.
All right. Well, I will say thank you both to you. I will say thank you to you both. Ugh, if I could manage it, I guess I just did. Thank you to you both, to Alex Weimann and to Matthew Jennejohn. You'll see them both when Early Music Vancouver presents the festive cantatas, this year's iteration, with the Bach Magnificat and the Let Our Mouths Be Full of Laughter. You say it in German, Alex. I'm not going to do it.
Unser Mund, our mouth, sei voll Lachens, be full of laughter.
Lovely. So you'll find them both on stage, both at the Kamiq Center on the 17th of December and the Chan Center in the afternoon. of the 18th of December. That is, I think we can say definitively, a Saturday and a Sunday. And that'll be a great treat. And although we're actually speaking in the middle of November, it seems a little early to say I'm wishing you a happy holiday. I was in a restaurant earlier today, and for the first time I heard on the Muzak Christmas music. So it's officially arrived. The season is with us. So I'll say it without compunction or hesitation. I wish you both a very happy Christmas time, and thanks for spending this time with us today.
Merry Christmas. That's the first time I've said it this year.
Thank you too. Merry Christmas, and thanks for having us.
Yes.